Well, hey everybody, welcome to week 3 of our series, What to Do When You Don't Know What to Do. In this series, we're looking at the story of a man named Joseph because he found himself in situations in his life where he wasn't sure what to do. And we're trying to see what did he do in those moments and how can that help us figure out what we're supposed to do when it's not always super obvious. Maybe you've had that happen to you. Maybe you try to figure out, okay, what's the right thing to do in this situation? And sometimes that answer is really obvious. I shouldn't lie, I shouldn't cheat, I shouldn't steal. But sometimes the answer isn't as obvious as we'd like it to be. Sometimes it's hard to know what's the right thing to do. Maybe you've had this happen to you. I've had it happen to me once where you find money. I remember one time I was at Cedar Point and I was getting off one of the best rides there, the Magnum. And I remember I was coming down the ramp and there was a $50 bill sitting on the ground. And at first, this was my reaction. But then I started to think about the fact that, wait, somebody lost their $50. Likely somebody who's there with their family, there with their kids, and maybe this is like the one trip they got to take that summer and they just happen to lose their spending money for that day, or their lunch money for that day. And I kind of had this little bit of a inner conflict where I was like, all right, what should I do right now? What's the right thing to do here? Because some people were like, it's your lucky day, man. You get $50, go spend it on a game or go get a dessert or something. Other people were saying you should go turn it into the management, to the lost and found, because somebody might be looking for that. Then other people were like, if you go turn it into management, they're just going to keep it for themselves. They're not going to give it away. You should keep it for yourself. And I was hearing all these people tell me what to do and tell me what they think I should do. But what I was trying to focus on is, well, what's the right thing to do? And it wasn't super obvious. What I decided to do with the money is I decided instead of keeping it for myself and instead of turning it in because it likely wasn't going to get back to its owner, I just bought lunch for everybody I was with that day. Because to me, that felt like the right thing to do. The right thing to do would be to share that money with the people I'm around. But you've probably found yourself in situations where you didn't know what the right thing to do was. Like maybe you're in a relationship, but you've noticed yourself texting this other girl or this other guy a lot. Like, a lot. And you're realizing, well, it's not cheating, but is this the right thing to be doing? Or maybe you've had a parent tell you to do something and you're like, I know that this is against the law or this is against what I believe in, but my parent is telling me to do it. So should I do it or shouldn't I? Or maybe you're just trying to make a decision on where to go to college or who you should date or many other myriad of decisions. And you're like, okay, this isn't black and white. This is pretty gray and I'm not sure I know what the right thing to do is. Well, Joseph found himself in a similar situation thousands of years ago, and it's recorded in the Bible for us. If you've been following along with us so far, we've seen Joseph in a bunch of different situations. To catch you up to speed, he was declared his father's favorite. His brothers didn't like that, so they plotted to sell him into slavery. He gets sold into slavery. He feels alone, but then as we saw last week, it reminds us that God was with Joseph. And here's where we find Joseph this week. Joseph gets sold into slavery, but because the Lord was with him, he was found in favor of the leaders and the rulers. So this guy, his name's Potiphar, and he's like a king and a president and like a celebrity, kind of like all mixed into one. Like this dude was legit. The people of Egypt like absolutely loved him, and he had full power over everything. And he takes a liking to Joseph. And so he brings Joseph on his staff, and Joseph begins to live in Potiphar's house. Like this was like a mansion. This is like a super, super nice home. There's probably like granite countertops, indoor swimming pools, bowling alleys on the basement. And this is where Joseph gets to live. Remember, this guy was supposed to be a slave. But then something happens, and Joseph finds himself in a situation where he doesn't know what the right thing to do is. Here's what happens. Genesis 39:6 tells us that Potiphar put Joseph in charge of everything he owned. And that Joseph did such a good job that Potiphar didn't have to concern himself with anything, any of the responsibilities of running the kingdom. He just had to figure out, what do I want to eat today? And here's where the situation gets a little bit interesting. It says, Joseph was well-built and handsome. I think I should have been named Joseph. But the Bible says Joseph was well-built and handsome, and Potiphar's wife started to take notice of him. And this is where it gets a little bit dicey for Joseph. Potiphar's wife takes a liking to Joseph, and she looks at him and she says, "Come to bed with me." talk about a little awkward. And this is the funny thing, it's kind of a side tangent. If you don't think the Bible is interesting, that's because you haven't read it thoroughly. This is literally a story in the Bible, and it gets very, very interesting. So Joseph has this woman who's in charge of him, who's supposed to be ruling over him, making a request to go to bed with him. Should Joseph listen to that? Because technically this person's in authority over him. But he also feels conflicted because he's like, this is wrong. This is another man's wife. This is somebody that I trust. And honestly, I don't think that this is what God is calling me to do. So Joseph declines. And the story says that the woman becomes even more aggressive, and she tries to do this day after day where she says, come to bed with me. And he says, no, I'm not going to. Come to bed with me. And finally, Joseph breaks. Joseph snaps a little bit, and these are the words that he says. In verse 8, it says, but Joseph refused. Look, he told her, my master trusts me with everything in his entire household. No one here has more authority than I do. He has held back nothing from me except you, because you are his wife. How could I do such a wicked thing? It would be a great sin against God. You see, Joseph finds himself in a situation where he doesn't know what the right thing to do is. On one hand, this person is an authority over him, and on the other hand, he feels like this is not what God is calling him to do. And in this moment, Joseph sticks with his integrity. Now, integrity is kind of a weird word. It's weird that you see up on posters in your teacher's classroom. But integrity simply means doing the right thing regardless of outcome. And this is the big idea, the thing that I hope you take away from today if you forget everything else I've said. When you don't know what to do, focus on doing the next right thing. When you find yourself in situations where you're upset about what's going on around you and you're like, this is too big of a problem for me to handle on my own, I don't know how to do this, focus on doing the next right thing. When you find yourself feeling some tension over decisions that you've made or over a decision you could make, focus on doing the next right thing. You see, Joseph doesn't get super overwhelmed and worked up and go, I need to talk to Potiphar about this, I need to set up all these systems, I need to figure this thing out. He just simply focuses on doing the next right thing, which is to say, no, this isn't what I feel God calling me to in this moment. But the thing is, that decision doesn't really work out well for Joseph. Potiphar's wife becomes so mad that he refused her that she accuses him of raping her. And Potiphar believes his wife and actually sends Joseph to prison. And this is a really, really important reminder that doing the right thing sometimes is going to cost you. Doing the right thing will cost you. That day, when I found $50, doing the right thing with it cost me the $50. I didn't get to spend it on myself, I spent it on other people. It cost me a little bit of time. But at the end of the day, I felt that was the right thing to do. And doing the right thing in your life is going to cost you. It's going to cost you something. It's either going to cost you a little bit of money, maybe it's going to cost you an awkward conversation, maybe it's going to cost you a friendship. I'm not sure what it's going to cost you. But in moments where you have 2 or 3 or multiple decisions to make, you have to ask yourself what you're willing to spend. Are you willing to spend a little bit of your time or a little bit of your money to do the right thing, or are you going to spend your integrity? You see, in moments where you don't know what to do, don't make a decision that will cost you your integrity. Because your integrity says a lot about who you are. And for Joseph, it cost him his freedom. It cost him years of his life spent in prison. But it didn't cost him his integrity. His integrity stayed intact because he did the right thing. You see, Joseph did what he thought God was calling him to, and he trusted God with the outcome. That's a really brave and difficult thing to do. But at the end of the day, that's what keeping your integrity intact looks like. And also, because of this, as we're going to find out as we continue to read the story, Joseph actually sets himself up by this decision to have way more success in the future. You see, he did what God called him to, and he trusted God with the outcome, regardless of what it was. And when we do that, our integrity remains intact. When we do the right thing, we continue to earn the right to be heard in other people's life. When we do the right thing, we have trust with the people around us. And we're going to watch how that plays out for Joseph, because it plays out for him. But in your life, when you don't know what to do, choose to do the right thing. Choose to do the next right thing. And really good way to determine, okay, what is the right thing then? All right, Josh, I want to do that, but what does that actually look like? What I want you to do is, in situations where you're not sure what to do, weigh the two outcomes. If one outcome is going to cost you your integrity, don't choose that outcome. If one outcome makes you feel a lot of tension, like it kind of gives you a little pit in your stomach and you're like, I don't know about this, don't go with that decision. Because doing the right thing usually isn't going to make you feel guilty or afraid or shameful. So when you're faced with a decision and you don't know what to do, focus on doing the next right thing. Because when you do that, you'll keep your integrity intact. Thanks.
Hey, high school students, just a couple announcements. We're excited to announce that we're back at the Burnett's June 24th, 7 to 9 p.m. We're going to have beach volleyball, tiki torches at the fire pit for s'mores, and obviously we're going to jump in the pond for a big splash. Hey students, do you wish that you had a portable Bible app at your fingertips at all times? Well, now you can. When you download the YouVersion app, we have daily devotionals on every one of our series from now on, including what to do when you don't know what to do. So download the YouVersion today and start that daily devotional.